You walk into a room. There is a plant in the corner, a small green thing in a pot. You barely notice it. You glance at it, maybe water it once a week, maybe forget it entirely. It sits there, silent, still, asking nothing. But what if it is not silent? What if, right now, as you sit wherever you are, the plant nearest to you is registering your presence, processing the warmth of your body, reacting to the chemicals floating off your skin into the air, the vibrations your feet send through the floor, the carbon dioxide your lungs exhale with every single breath you take? What if plants have been thinking about humans for millions of years? This is not a fairy tale. This is biology. Plants do not have brains. There is no debate about that. But the absence of a brain does not mean the absence of intelligence. Think about that for a moment. Every definition of intelligence you were ever taught was written by a human, for a human, about a human. Humans decided what intelligence looks like, and then they looked at the plant in the corner and called it decoration. A still life, a background object. But the plant was not decoration. The plant was watching. Here is the first thing you need to understand about plants. They are ancient, unimaginably, terrifyingly ancient. The first land plants appeared on Earth approximately 470 million years ago. Humans, a mere 200,000 years. That means plants existed on this planet for over 469 million years before you took your first breath. For nearly 500 million years, plants survived ice ages, continental drift, asteroid impacts, mass extinctions that wiped out entire kingdoms of life. Without running, without hiding, without a single scream for help. They developed something else instead. They developed chemistry. When a plant is under stress, when an insect begins to eat its leaves, when a drought begins to tighten its roots, when a human pulls at its stem, it releases invisible chemical signals into the surrounding air. Scientists call these volatile organic compounds, VOCs, but let's call them what they actually are, distress signals. The plant is broadcasting to every living thing within range. Something is happening. Something is hurting me. React. Now. And here is the part that should unsettle you. The plants nearby, the ones that have not been touched, that have not been harmed at all, receive that signal, and they begin producing their own chemical defenses before anything even touches them, preemptively. This is not a coincidence. This is a communication system, a network of invisible chemical warnings traveling through the air between organisms that have no mouths, no vocal cords, no voices of any kind. And yet, the message is sent. The message is always received. So what does the plant in your room register when you walk in? Let's be honest about what you are from a plant's perspective. You are a large, warm-blooded organism that exhales carbon dioxide, the primary ingredient plants use to build their own bodies through photosynthesis. In that sense, you are genuinely useful. A breathing, walking delivery machine for one of the most important chemicals in the plant kingdom. Research has shown that plants in enclosed spaces near humans grow differently than plants in complete isolation. Your breath, your invisible biological exhale, is registered and processed by every leaf in that room. You are feeding it, without knowing it, without meaning to. But here is the other side of that truth. You are also a potential threat, and plants know the difference. Research from the University of Missouri demonstrated something remarkable. When a plant detects the specific sound frequencies produced by a caterpillar chewing its leaves, it activates a chemical defense response within minutes, not hours, minutes. The plant hears the chewing, and it fights back before the damage gets worse. Now consider this carefully. The sound frequencies produced by a caterpillar chewing and the sound frequencies produced by a large animal walking on the ground carry similar vibrational signatures through the stems and soil. Vibration is vibration. The floor carries your weight. The pot carries that vibration upward into the roots. The plant registers the arrival of something large. This is not poetry. This is measurable. This is repeatable. This is real. The plant is not passive. It never was. It is an organism under constant pressure from the environment around it, from the insects that want to eat it, from the fungi that want to colonize its roots, from the weather that wants to break it. And now, from you, it developed its intelligence, or whatever word you choose to use instead, across hundreds of millions of years of that pressure. And survival pressure does not produce passivity, it produces strategy. And then there is the question of memory. In 2014, a scientist named Monica Gagliano conducted an experiment that disrupted everything the scientific community thought it knew. She dropped mimosa pudica plants, the small sensitive plants that fold their leaves shut when touched, from a small height, repeatedly, over and over again. At first, every single drop triggered the same defensive response. The leaves folded shut immediately, protective instinct, ancient reflex. But after enough repetitions of the same harmless drop, the plant stopped folding. It had assessed the situation, categorized the drop as non-threatening, and stopped wasting energy on an unnecessary response. It had learned, and when Galliano tested the same plants again 1 month later, they still remembered, still did not fold. The memory had persisted through 4 weeks of ordinary plant life. A plant with no brain, no hippocampus, no neurons of any kind, remembered a specific physical experience for an entire month. So ask yourself the question that should be keeping you awake at night. If a plant can learn, can adapt, can retain a memory, then what has it learned about you? Here is a thought that will stay with you long after this video ends. For the last 12,000 years, since the agricultural revolution began, humans have been the single most dominant force shaping the plant world. Humans have chosen which plants live and which ones die, which seeds get carried across oceans and which ones get burned. Human preference has redirected the evolutionary path of entire plant species more dramatically than almost any other natural force in recorded history. And plants respond to evolutionary pressure. They adapt, they change, they survive. The corn you eat does not exist in the wild. It was built by humans through thousands of years of selective breeding from a plant called teosinte. The banana in your kitchen is a product of human intervention going back centuries. The roses in your garden have had their very genetic structure altered by human aesthetic preference over hundreds of years of cultivation. Plants have been adapting their bodies to what humans select, generation by generation, silently and without protest. They evolved toward you. Whether to please you or simply to survive you is a question with no comfortable answer. Consider what that means for a moment. The most widespread plants on Earth today are not the ones that flourished in isolation. They are the ones that made themselves useful to humans. The ones that became food, medicine, decoration, symbol. The ones you chose. Plants, in a very real sense, co-opted humans just as humans were domesticating them. You spread their seeds across every continent. You cleared competing species from their path. You built entire economies around keeping them alive. If that is not a form of intelligence, then what is it? Underground, the picture becomes even larger. The mycelial network, the vast web of fungal threads connecting trees and plants beneath the soil of entire forests, is constantly carrying chemical information between organisms. Nutrient transfers, distress signals, resource sharing. Scientists at the University of British Columbia discovered that mother trees can recognize the chemical signature of their own offspring in the soil and will send additional carbon and nutrients specifically to their own seedlings through this underground web. Recognition, preference, something that functions biologically like family. This is a civilization, an ancient, silent, root-bound civilization that existed long before human cities were even imagined. And into that civilization, you arrived, a creature that breathes loudly, that cuts, that burns, that pulls things out of the ground, something the forest had never encountered in quite the same way before. Every ancient tree standing right now has been here longer than most human institutions. Some remember through the chemical archive of their own growth rings, every drought, every fire, every long winter for thousands of years. They have been watching civilizations rise. They have been watching civilizations fall. What did that ancient network feel? The first time it registered the vibration of human footsteps, here is where the science stops, and the question begins. Plants do not think in words or images, but they process, they respond, they adapt, they warn each other, they remember, they recognize their own. They form chemical alliances. They wage invisible warfare. Every function you associate with a mind that is truly awake, plants perform. Just slower, just quieter, just differently. The plant in your room is not watching you with malice, but it is registering you. It is processing your warmth, your breath, your weight moving across the floor above its roots, and in the invisible chemistry of its cells. It is responding to your existence in a language that predates every human word ever spoken. So, you walk into a room. There is a plant in the corner, a small green thing in a pot. You barely notice it. You glance at it. Maybe water it once a week. Maybe forget it entirely. It sits there, silent, still, asking nothing, but it was never asking nothing. It has been processing everything since long before your species drew its first breath on this planet. And long after your civilization dissolves back into the soil, the roots will still be there, transmitting, remembering, responding. The question was never what you think of plants. The question was always what they think of you.